Welcome to another episode of Decode. Have you noticed how life keeps getting easier? One tap and food arrives at your door. One swipe and you just got a date with someone. One click and your boredom vanishes. Everything's faster, smoother, effortless, convenient. And yet, something seems to be missing. Our attention span today is actually shorter than the attention span of a goldfish, which is about 8 seconds, according to a Microsoft study. Global anxiety and depression are on the rise. Only 5 years ago to today, they have been rising by more than 25%, according to data from the World Health Organization. But we have everything, right? We built a paradise of convenience, but of course we forgot that there's nothing to learn once you are in paradise. When effort disappears, growth disappears. And when growth disappears, life loses part of its meaning. This new dictator doesn't shout, it whispers to our ear. Why do you need to strain yourself? Come sit on the sofa, relax, be comfy. And every time, that whisper wins. Welcome to the tyranny of comfort, the world where you don't have to try. Now we're going to look back at a time when pain was sacred, because we live in an age where pain is treated as a malfunction, where every discomfort is solved by an app, a pill, or a motivational quote. Our lives are tracked, optimized. Sleep, diet, mood, everything is gamified, right? But the more precisely we measure life, the less life we seem to have left. Not long ago, pain was the language of the world. It didn't frighten, it actually educated. Through pain, we learned who we were. The Spartans, they trained their children to stand barefoot in the frost, to eat little, to endure silence. The Japanese samurai, they practiced misogi, cold water purification, because they believed that the body's shock was the spirit awakening. In medieval monasteries, monks fasted and slept on stone, learning to master desire through deprivation. None of this was considered cruel. It was instruction, growth. Pain was a teacher, not a punishment. It revealed what comfort hides. Mens sana in corpore sano, as the Latin sentence says, a healthy mind inside a healthy body. For the ancients, that was not poetry, that was a rule of life. Today, we call pain stress. We're burned out by our work, and we struggle with a problem to fix. We've patterned our life so much with protection that our instincts have become numb. Our ancestors, they sought strength, and through it, growth. We seek relaxation, but a species made for struggle cannot live forever in a warm cave. Without friction, we rot. Without pain, we lose our purpose. Pain once made us human. Now, we're avoiding it so much that we're becoming like a hollow toy. Now we're going to talk about discipline, which was one of the key building blocks of civilization through many millennia. There was a time when discipline was considered a virtue. Today, that word almost sounds offensive. We live in an era of soft rules and soft people. Parents, they fear saying no to their children. Let me tell you a story. 7 years ago, I was actually giving a talk, a lecture in one of these posh clubs here in my city, in Barcelona. And it was about children and technology. And so dads were in the audience, and I was actually telling them how to control, iPads and iPhones and such. And so at one moment, I was actually saying that basically we need to learn to say no. And then one person from the audience, he raised his hand and he said, "Hey, but how do I tell no to my child?" And I was kind of like, I don't get it. So I said, no. And then the guy stays there like doubtful and raises his hand again and says, "But he gets angry." And I was like, yeah, and? You see, with the relationship between parents and children, we have lost the discipline of saying no to our children when we believe that it's good for education to receive a no. And so we try to become friends of our kids, and by becoming friends, we will never be a good friend because we're from a different generation. And actually, you'll have orphan children because you have actually taken away from these children something that's extremely important, which is a father or a mother in each case, right? So again, we live in an era where discipline has been so shallow that basically parents fear saying no to their kids. The same way, I've been a university professor for very many years. Now we live in an era where teachers, they're afraid to actually give bad news to their students in the form, for example, of bad grades. I was a teacher in a university here in Spain for about 20 years. And here in Spain, you have to do what's called the graduation report, which is kind of like a big work that you undertake to actually graduate from your undergraduate studies, right? And so you need to do a presentation of that. And I remember once, this is a true story, basically I had a really bad student, and the student came to this graduation presentation of this kid's graduation report, and honestly the work was insufficient. It was really bad, and so the tribunal, it was formed by 3 people, me and 2 other professors, and so he ends his explanation of his work, and it was really shallow, really bad. It contained many mistakes. And so we meet the 3 members of the tribunal, and I said, I think this guy needs to get a fail and submit again in 6 months, because this is actually unacceptable. Because again, we're putting a stamp of approval on this candidate, and that's unfair to all the other students who did a good job. And I voted to actually fail this student, right? And the other 2 professors actually were, complaining to me, saying, hey, but you cannot do that because, this is an important day for him and his family's here and, they're going to celebrate. And I was like, so what? We need to be able to enforce discipline, because if we don't, then what is the growth? What is the learning for this student? And the reality is I voted no. And then, basically, he got like a pass, like a conditional pass by, the dean of the faculty or whatever. So they gave him the title when I think he didn't deserve it. So again, discipline is so shallow that parents fear saying no, professors fear giving bad grades. And that takes us to the current day and age in which we've confused kindness with indulgence. You can be kind to someone but still give bad news, like, hey, I'm going to say no to this because I love you, because I'm your father and I think this is important. We have a confused freedom with irresponsibility. We think, freedom means you do whatever you want, and as we will explain later, that's not true. And we have confused love with the absence of boundaries. When I was a kid, there was a sentence that my mom and my dad, they keep saying to me, and that sentence says, the person who loves you more will make you cry. Talking about this relationship between fathers and children. And I think that that's a very true story. Look at how far away that sounds in the world of today. Discipline is the art of the inner resistance. It's the voice inside that says, not yet. Not yet. I'm not going to stop studying. I'm not going to stop running. I'm not going to give up. It's the ability to keep going, not because it's easy, but because it's the right thing to do. Discipline is not about control from the outside. It's about self-control. It's about us believing in ourselves, believing that the pain today will bring strength tomorrow, because as we get used to this pain, we will become strong. Believe that the effort now will lead to peace later, that we will be able to relax later, but now we need to make the effort and we need to keep fighting. Believe that who you could be is worth more than what you feel right now. For example, we'll talk later about some exercises and they're painful, but the idea is that if you overcome that pain and you focus on the mental discipline, then you become a higher version of yourself. That's what separates, discipline is what separates instinct, which is, what animals have, from intention, which is what we have as humans. Animals, they obey impulse, right? Humans endure. That's one of our characteristics. And through endurance, we become free because we become stronger. And when you become stronger, that is when you can choose. Again, discipline is not the enemy of freedom. Of course, a lot of people will say, I want to be free. I want to do whatever I want. I don't want any discipline. But that's actually the opposite. Discipline is not the enemy of freedom. It actually creates freedom. Because without discipline, there is no character. There's no definition of the self, of yourself. And without characters, there's no choice. And without choice, there can be no freedom. The only thing you have is random behaviors just because you feel that's fun. But again, there's no true choice, and hence there's no freedom without character and then without discipline. Modern culture has broken the mold of the previous generations by telling us that we deserve the reward without the effort, that we deserve the result without the process, that we have built a generation that seems to be allergic to difficulty and to pain. But actually, when we overcome difficulty, that is when we grow. I'm going to tell you a story. This is from a science paper by a psychologist called Walter Mischel. Maybe you've heard of this story. And he proved this decades ago at Stanford University with the famous marshmallow experiment. Maybe you heard about it. You know, the marshmallow experiment is very, very easy. He took children about 8, 10 years old. He put them in a room with a plate, and on the plate he put a marshmallow. A candy, and then he told the kid, hey, you can eat it now if you wish. Well, he said, I'm going to leave the room. Okay, you can eat it now, or if you wait for 15 minutes, I'm going to come back and I will give you 2 instead of 1. Get the idea? You can enjoy it now, or you can delay the reward and enjoy it in 15 minutes, but I will give you 2. Okay, and of course this was all recorded with cameras, and he left the room, closed the door, so we can see on camera what happened. As you can imagine, some kids squirmed, some looked away, some sang to themselves to endure temptation, and some of them actually overcame the temptation and waited for the 15 minutes and got 2 marshmallows, and some of them actually ate it right away because they were unable to hold their reward for longer. So you'll say, so what? Okay, the interesting part is that Walter Mischel, he did this with lots of kids, and actually he followed them through life decades after the marshmallow experiment. And the interesting part about that is that actually he could prove a correlation between being able to delay the gratification on the marshmallow experiment and actually success in a number of fields in life. Specifically, the ones who waited for the 15 minutes to get the second marshmallow, they scored higher in tests, they earned more money, and they lived healthier lives in terms of less addictions, less compulsive behaviors. So the interesting thing here, the proof of this experiment, which is very well known, and by the way, you can find the book which is called The Marshmallow Experiment by Walter Mischel that explains this, is that actually it's not intelligence that actually predicts success in life, but it's self-control. The ability to delay rewards is what actually predicts success in life. And what is our ability to delay rewards? Discipline. The mental discipline of saying, this is going to be painful, I have the marshmallow in front of me here, but I'm going to stop. I'm not going to eat it because I know the future will be brighter. So discipline, in a way, is trust in the future. Trust in the future that's actually above your threshold of pain. In a way, what you're saying is, sure, this is uncomfortable because I would love to eat that marshmallow now, but I trust that the future is going to be better, so my control is actually of my own mind is better, so I'm going to wait and delay the gratification. And that's the same thing that happens when you're doing, weightlifting, and you're thinking, God, this hurts, but I'm going to keep doing it because it's important. When you're trying to lose weight, when you're trying to study for an exam, or any of the things that require discipline, which is again the main subject of this video. This is what psychologist Angela Duckworth calls grit. Grit is the passion and the perseverance for long-term goals. Angela Duckworth ran a number of tests on intelligence, but also on grit. And in her research, grit, understood by perseverance, outperformed talent and intelligence in predicting who would thrive, from a spelling bee competition or a West Point cadet. And yet we have designed a world to destroy grit, a world of instant notifications, fast dopamine, and zero delay. We spent 50 years proving that patience predicts success, and then invented a world designed to make patience impossible. Now we'll focus on the body, because effort is biology's way of keeping us alive. We live in bodies that we no longer use. Our muscles, they don't know pain. Our skin has never felt real cold. We sweat in gyms, not in real life. Even in fitness, we seek shortcuts, hacks, supplements, filters, surgery. Health has become a product, not a form of character. But the body is not decoration, it's a form of dialogue. Every strain, every tremor, every drop of sweat is the body's way of saying, I'm still here. I want you to try one exercise, which is one of the most focused exercises you can ever do, which is the plank. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. If not, there's a video here showing you how a plank is made. You just, stand with your arms like this in a very straight line, focusing on the core of your muscles. You just stay there, and after 10 seconds, things begin happening. It only takes 10 seconds for the plank to begin telling you, hey, this is kind of like uncomfortable. After 30 seconds, your whole body will be shaking. Maybe you'll reach 1 minute. Maybe you're in good shape and you'll reach 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. I can do about 2 minutes myself, and I'm 51. But that's the interesting part, that as you try to hold longer doing a plank, your mind begins changing. There's a moment in which your body begins saying, stop, this is painful. But your brain begins saying, no, 5 more seconds, come on, I can do it. That's the moment you connect your mind with your body. Science has a name for this moment, which is called Hormesis. It's the principle that small doses of stress actually strengthen our system. A little cold, a little pain, a little fear, it trains the organism to handle more. There's a scientist called Edward Calabrese. He's done studies, he's a biologist actually, and basically he did a study showing that controlled stress triggers cellular repair and longevity. So actually these moments of stress, like the ones we experience on the plank, actually make us grow. They enhance our recycling, our repair of our cells. Neuroscientists discovered that these brief discomfort phases, about 30 seconds of effort or cold exposure, activate what's called the cingulate cortex of the brain, which is the region tied to motivation and resilience. What this means is that every small victory, even 5 seconds more doing a plank or 1 mile more running on a treadmill or on the streets, actually is rewiring your brain to prefer meaning and suffering over ease and relaxation. I know this moment really well as we speak. As I said, I'm 51 and I'm now training for my second half marathon. I have asthma, so I cannot do a full marathon, but I do half marathon, so that's 21 kilometers for you. And my weekly routine, I actually run between 2 and 3 times a week, about 6 kilometers, 7 kilometers. And so what I'm doing now is I'm undergoing hormesis, this process of increasing pain. And what I do is basically every week I try to run 1 more kilometer. So for example, if my typical routine is 7 kilometers, I'm going to move to 8, then 9, then 10, week by week, increasing my pain threshold until I'm ready for this half marathon, which I'm going to run in the month of February. And so again, I have about 3 months to go, and I need to get used from running 7 kilometers to running 21 kilometers as kind of like a routine. Will I enjoy this half marathon? Of course not. I'm going to sweat. It's going to be painful. Maybe I will get blisters. Maybe I will, get tired and be stressed. Do I want to do it? Absolutely. That's the idea. The idea of discipline is beginning to enjoy things that are going to be painful in the short term, but are going to bring pleasure in the long run, or they're even going to bring growth. If you're a long distance runner like I am, you know that every kilometer becomes a dialogue between your mind and your body. We're not running on an empty mind. What we're doing constantly is we're analyzing our body to understand what's going on in the different body parts. I'm asking my lungs, how are you? I'm looking at my knees. I'm looking at my ankles. I'm looking at my heart. And this becomes an exercise not of comfort, but of calibration. The goal is not pleasure. It's proof. It's the proof that you can keep going when your body says no because you have mental grit. There's a very cool study published in the Netherlands in 2016 that found out that people who take daily cold showers, even in the winter, they nearly had 30% less sick days at their job, which actually proves that this training for resistance and for discipline has an impact on your body. And at the end of the day, it can also impact your health because pain trains the immune system as well. So next time you shiver, you strain, you hold still your plank, or you're suffering because you're running a half marathon, remember, effort is not punishment. It's a form of adaptation. It's the way of the body to grow. Our body's not built for comfort. It's built for growth. And growth begins exactly where your comfort ends. In the previous section, we've spoken about the body. Now we move to the mind, because pain doesn't just shape muscles, it creates your identity. From childhood, we're taught to avoid pain. We're told, don't cry, don't fall, don't fail. So we grew up hiding pain under layers of comfort, be it distraction, scrolling, noise, or even painkillers when we grow older. But psychological pain isn't a malfunction, it's a message. It says, pay attention, this matters. That's how the mind learns, updates, and grows. Every kind of mental growth begins with a crack, a project that collapses, a rejection letter for a job, a friendship that fades, moments that feel like endings, but they're actually the mind rewiring itself for the future. There's a psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust in a Nazi concentration camp. And he wrote an amazing book, one of the books that you guys should read, called A Man's Search for Meaning. Basically, Frankl observed that among the fellow inmates in the concentration camp, those who survived were able to connect with a purpose in life to feel positive, even in the grim circumstances of the concentration camp. According to Frankl, the way a prisoner imagined the future affected his prospect of longevity. Those who had some sort of optimism or some sort of life plan actually had higher survival rates than those who were gloomy and they thought that the situation would never get better. He called this tragic optimism, the courage to see purpose even inside this situation of pain. Pain, he said, is the proof that life still needs something from you: effort. And 70 years after the Holocaust, modern psychology agrees with Viktor Frankl. There's a scientist at Stanford called Carol Dweck, and she discovered that when people believe their abilities will grow through effort and failure, their brains can literally rewire and form new neural pathways. She calls this the growth mindset, that every mistake is not an evidence of defeat, but more like a signal of adaptation and growth. Those kind of people are the ones who can rewire their brain for growth. So again, when you feel pain, be it emotional, creative, existential, it's not a form of punishment. It's feedback from your system that your mind is adjusting its map to a new reality. So every doubt, every loss, every rejection, it becomes a form of learning. Think about this. Think about a sculpture. I was in Rome the other day watching, the Pietà by Michelangelo, and I was telling my kids, look at this. Imagine if in the middle of sculpting this amazing sculpture, there's a crack in the stone. You need to try again, right? A sculpture doesn't curse the stone for being hard. He needs the resistance from the stone to reveal the shapes hidden inside. And so do we. We need resistance. We need pain for us to actually be able to grow, because pain is the resistance that when we overcome that resistance will define our new self. So again, pain is not here to destroy you. It's here to remind you of who you are becoming. Of course, this tyranny of comfort is a worldwide phenomenon, but it hurts especially in the West, in our civilization, be it, the US, Canada, Europe, etc. So what I want to do now is I want to look to other places, other corners of the world where life still has a little bit of pain, a little bit of effort, and it still matters. Here in the West, comfort equals success. But as I've said in other videos, I've worked in China, Japan, India. I work in many other locations. And honestly, once you step outside the Western bubble, it feels like another planet. And maybe a better one for these matters. Let's take a look at Japan, for example. In Japan, children, they clean their classroom every day at the end of the school day as a form of respect. They sweep, they wash, and they serve lunch to their classmates. There is no janitors. This is called gakosoji, school cleaning. It teaches humility, respect, and ownership of the shared space. It's no surprise that Japan's schools remain among the highest performing in the world, not just in math and reading, but in discipline and civic duty. Let's travel south of Japan now to Singapore, a country well known by its extreme discipline. Students, they stand up when teachers enter the room, they recite the national pledge every morning, and the country ranks near the top of global education scores. Not because their students are smarter, but because discipline is still considered a form of love, not of oppression. But we don't need to travel to faraway countries to find good examples of discipline. Here in the US, you can take a look at, for example, the US Marine Corps. You may think that one of the first things they learn is how to march or how to fire a weapon. Nope. The first thing they learn is how to make their own bed. And that's not because of neatness or because it's going to be more comfy, but because of mindset. There's an excellent talk by the Admiral William McRaven, who once said, "If you want to change the world, start by making your own bed." A simple ritual that teaches order, pride in your achievement of making the bed to perfection, and the belief that small victories are the foundational bricks of greater ones. This year, I'm very fortunate to be working in India, and you can see the same type of discipline represented there. Sure, if you go to a big city like Mumbai or Delhi, it's not going to be so different from us, but once you move to the small villages, that's where the interesting things really begin to surface. The day begins with horns, dust, and prayer. Maybe at dawn you're going to see women carrying water from wells into their homes, men pushing carts of fruit and produce into the market for being sold, children running, some of them barefoot, to their schools. They don't run from pain. They live through pain. And maybe that's why decades later, so many of the world's CEO are actually raised in that system. They come from India. Think about this. What do the CEOs of Microsoft, Google, IBM, Adobe, and PepsiCo have in common? They're all from India, a country very well trained in resilience, in growth, through discipline, through pain. And if you get the feeling that most of these examples are about Asia, you may be right. At least based on my experience, the West has abandoned this culture of effort and resilience, whereas the East, specifically Asia, still maintains this idea of persistence out of personal duty. There's no better example to express this than Jensen Huang, the founder and CEO of NVIDIA, the famous chip maker. As you all know, NVIDIA is today the highest valued company in the world. What you guys may not know is that Jensen Huang, he started before NVIDIA as a teenage worker in a Denny's restaurant, clearing tables, washing dishes, cleaning toilets, And earlier this year, there was a very good interview with him with a live audience. And in this interview that I recommend you guys watch, he said, "No task is beneath me. I used to be a dishwasher. I have cleaned more toilets than all of you guys combined." And he said that with pride because, again, he didn't see this as a form of humiliation, but more as a form of training for his character. Because, again, humility is the first step towards greatness. Meanwhile, we in the West wake up, we reach for our phones, we complain about how slow the Wi-Fi is, and that the AC is not working and that we're warm. Again, we have built lives where everything works around us except us. According to the World Health Organization, rates of depression in the West and anxiety are consistently higher in wealthier nations such as us than in poorer ones. Psychologists call this the paradox of comfort. When risk and struggle disappear, so does meaning and well-being. There's a global study from Gallup in 2023 that found out that people in low-income nations, they reported a higher level of gratitude and optimism than those in the richest countries of Earth. This is what we call rich people's problems, that we complain about nimble things such as, the battery of my phone died and that kind of stuff. And that makes us more unhappy than the guys in India or the guys in Bangladesh that maybe are 10 times more poor, but they are happier than we are. Not because poverty is noble, because that's an archetype and that's not true, but because resistance and grit is what gives our life shape. We have invented thousands of ways to make our life easier and more comfy, but we haven't invented a single way to make it more meaningful, because the further we move away from pain and resistance, the further we drift away from life itself. Now I want to examine the way technology turned comfort into a religion. But before we do so, I would love to ask you to subscribe to Decode. It's the way you can support the channel. Think about this. This video took maybe 50 hours of work from researching, script writing, rehearsing, recording, editing and publishing to YouTube. And it takes about 10 seconds of your time to hit that button and subscribe to the channel. And when you do so, of course, YouTube gets the message and says, oh, you know what? They like this channel, so let's give it more visibility. So basically, with zero cost for you, you're helping us grow. So please subscribe to Decode. Show us your support. Thank you. So again, we live in an age where drones deliver food, where your fridge can predict your cravings, and your phone knows if you're sad even before you do. We dreamt of machines that would free us, and actually what we have done is build machines that have enslaved us very gently and sneakily. Every tap saves a second of our time. True, but it also numbs one of our neurons. Every app removes friction. True, but it also erases resilience. We wake up with our phones and we sleep with them beside our bed. We no longer feel lonely, bored, or longing. We don't process emotions anymore. We have outsourced them to algorithms. In recent years, psychologists have coined a new term that's very scary, which is the dopamine adaptation threshold. This was discovered by Wolfram Schultz at the University of Cambridge. So let me tell you what this is about. Dopamine, as many of you may know, it's a neurotransmitter in our brain, and it's a neurotransmitter responsible for action and specifically to motivate the pursuit of rewards. So when the brain anticipates a reward, basically it releases dopamine. And so what the team at Cambridge discovered is that, again, the spike of dopamine does not come with the reward, but it comes when we're able to anticipate the reward. So basically, when we see what's coming, that's when the dopamine triggers. But the interesting part about this is that there's a desensitization process. So if the reward is always the same, the dopamine spike becomes lower and lower and lower because we have this dopamine adaptation threshold that I was telling you about. So that's why our scrolling, actually, we need more scrolling, or we need even more drugs to make a more extreme comparison when we become addict, because basically we need a higher dose to get the same amount of pleasure. And that's why we end up doing endless scrolling on social media. It feels like running, but we're never arriving because we're always being fed new rewards and keeping our dopamine system excited. There's a Harvard University study in 2019 that found that heavy social media users had reduced gray matter in the brain regions responsible for reward and empathy. So we've numbed not only joy, but by numbing joy, we have also numbed our compassion. We dreamt of comfort, but we got apathy instead. We replaced purpose with convenience, and we lost the ability to be surprised. And technology didn't stop there. It didn't stop serving us comfort. It learned to predict it, because we think we're very unique, that each one of us is very individual. But when we look at billions of points of data, we're just patterns. And of course, companies know how to exploit those patterns. Amazon, for example, can ship products to warehouses even before we buy them because they can predict that they will be popular. Netflix can change thumbnails per user, calculating which image will make you click depending on your demographic. Or Facebook can predict a breakup based on the words you type and how you scrolled. In 2012, Target, the famous retailer, sent coupons for baby clothes to a teenage girl in Minnesota. And her father was actually furious until he discovered that actually his daughter was pregnant. The algorithm of Target had detected change on the pattern of her shopping basket, and it was able to deduct that that woman was actually pregnant, and that was actually true. It's not magic, it's the mathematics of analytics, because when we look at us as a collective, as humans, we're just patterns. Technology was supposed to make us free, but what it did is build a cage so intelligent that it's invisible, but it's actually a cage that's able to track, to analyze, to understand, and to predict our behavior. And of course, once we become predictable, our discipline is very, very hard to sustain. So now that we have identified the problem, let's move on to the solutions. It all starts by recognizing that discipline is not the punishment that we have been sold. Discipline is actually love in action, love for yourself. It's how you prove to yourself that you're able to do something, that you're able to be better. So wake up early, hold a plank, take a cold shower, read one page, not for the likes, not for the aesthetics, not for social media, just because of respect for yourself. Every time you choose discipline, your brain slowly rewires. That is what the neuroscientist Michael Merzenich proved through his research in what's called neuroplasticity. It says that basically brain grows whenever there is resistance. Use it or lose it. It's not a metaphor. It's biology adapting to change. So every hard decision builds new neural pathways, redrawing the map inside your head. I want to introduce a very useful concept called the zone of proximal development. This was explained by Lev Vygotsky, and basically what it says is that real learning happens right at the edge of discomfort, the edge of difficulty, not in failure, not in ease, but right on that narrow zone just beyond comfort where you feel uncomfortable enough. That is where the brain rewires. And that's exactly the way you need to approach this. You need to be in that point where it's not too uncomfortable, but slightly uncomfortable, and slowly move the goalpost day by day so that your threshold of discomfort, your threshold of pain becomes larger. A very, very good example of this is the US Navy SEAL training program. You know, there's an infamous program called BUDS, which is basic underwater demolition / SEAL training, and it lasts 6 months. Of course, 6 brutal months. I'm not trying to turn you into a Navy SEAL, but some of the techniques they use may be useful for guys like you and me. Basically, what they do is they sleep for 4 hours every night. They run more than 300 miles, and they plunge into the Pacific again and again and again to basically build resistance, to higher the threshold of pain and the threshold of resistance. They introduce this concept called chunk suffering, which is this idea not about looking for a week ahead, but to look for 1 minute ahead, like 1 minute more of suffering, or even 10 seconds if you're undergoing something extremely stressful. And what they're trying to do is by repetition, they try to increase the threshold of what you can sustain. And the same rule can apply to us. That's the same technique I was telling you some minutes ago about my training for the half marathon, right? Start with something easy, 7 kilometers, then move to 8, then move to 9. If you want to lose weight, same idea. If you want to quit smoking, same idea. If you want to get used to cold showers, lower the temperature by 1 degree every day. You see, the idea is to slowly rewire our brain for pain, for resilience, and for grit. So now I'm going to share with you 5 very simple rituals, all of them free. You can do them at home, and they are going to help you build discipline, grit, and resilience. Let's go. Number 1. The cold shower. There's plenty of science backing that actually cold showers are beneficial for our mental being. The reason being is that basically in the old days when we were living in caves, etc., when we were submerged in water, most likely that was a situation of stress because, again, we're land mammals. And so whenever we submerge ourselves in water, specifically the face, we got a spike of dopamine and a spike of cortisol basically to wake us up, So start your day with a cold shower. Now this is actually easier because we have this systems where you can regulate the temperature. So day by day, again, as I said, build up your resistance a little bit every day. Start with a little bit of cold. Tomorrow, a little bit colder. And the day after, a little bit colder. Until in 1 week or 2 weeks' time, you're going to be able to have pure cold water on you, especially in the face early morning. When you're able to do this, again, count to 5. When you're able to be there for 5 seconds, count to 7, then count to 10, count to 15. You see? Build up resistance by exposing yourself to the discomfortable situation in higher and higher, more painful degrees to build up your grit. Second ritual, the plank. I spoke about this before. If you want to experience physical pain, the plank gives you the best bang for the buck. All it takes is 30 seconds, maybe 1 minute if you're lucky, to be in a position that you think, wow, this is really painful. I want to stop. Hold still, shake, endure. focus on your breathing, close your eyes. If you can, put your phone in front of you on the floor so you can have like a stop timer, and you can see how long you are able to sustain the plank. Again, on the first day, maybe it's going to be 10 seconds. That's great. It's a starting point, because once you know your base performance is 10 seconds, now on the second day, I want you to go for 12. And on the third one, I want you to go for 15. And again, in 1 month, you're going to be able to hold the plank for 2 minutes or 2 minutes and a half. And again, you'll feel better with yourself, and you will have rewired your brain to actually be able to endure even where circumstances are painful, they're uncomfortable. The third ritual I want you to experience is the ritual of silence. This is very much rooted in, monk life in the medieval ages, Zen Buddhism in Asia. Again, get your phone, put it on airplane mode, leave it aside, turn it around so there's no distractions, and start with, 5 minutes, pure silence. Close your eyes, do nothing, no music, no tasks, no TikTok, no nothing. Just focus on your breathing. Breathe in, count to 3, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 7 seconds. Remember, 3, 4, 7. And just repeat this for 5 minutes. And you'll see that in the first days, you're going to see your mind racing and trying to do things and coming up with ideas. It's going to be like a bee flying from subject to subject. But then slowly, as you build up grit, as you build up resilience, you're going to be able to hold silence for longer, to be at peace with yourself, to be more focused and to be more relaxed. Number 4, find your morning ritual. Take a look at your morning tomorrow when you wake up after you've seen this video. Think about what you do. What can you add to your morning, which is a ritual that requires a little bit of grit? Maybe you should make your bed. Maybe you should sweep your house. Maybe you should stretch. Maybe you should do the dishes. Again, get a routine of something that's uncomfortable, but that you commit to doing every day to perfection. There's a Japanese term for this called seisha seichu, which means perfect execution means perfect results. So pick what is going to be your seisha seichu moment, the thing you're going to do every morning to perfection. And ritual number 5, enjoy discomfort as a practice. Take a look at your life, and once a week, choose the hard path. Look at the things you do and what should you change. Maybe you should walk instead of drive. Maybe you should stop eating sugar. Maybe you should speak the truth, not for pain, but to build up strength. Remember, instant pleasure delivers short bursts of dopamine, but delayed rewards build long-term meaning. That's the adult form of joy, the joy of winning over yourself. Discipline is resistance against chaos, not control, but respect for life, because when you choose effort, you choose freedom. Keep training your discipline, and one day you will understand that you were not building up muscles, you were building yourself. We've come a long way. For centuries, discipline meant obedience. You followed orders of someone stronger or someone higher, like a parent or a general or a professor or a priest. They all repeated the same thing. You have to do this because I said so. And that is the old form of discipline, the discipline of fear, of authority. Sure, it built cathedrals, armies, empires, but it also broke people. And so we rebelled and we wanted freedom. We turned out the rules, we ignored the clocks, and we declared that we wanted to do whatever we wanted to do. But again, I think the pendulum swung so far, basically the pendulum law that sometimes we can overshoot. That's what happened. We escaped the prison of control only to build a softer one made of comfort and constant distractions. And now we obey a new master, which is not authority, but apathy. That's why I think we need something new. We need a discipline that's not based on punishment, not based on submission, but on intention. This is a new discipline which is not about, I do this because they told me to. It's because I choose to. It's not obedience, it's ownership of our acts. It's not fear, it's rediscovering purpose. Nobody forces me to run this half marathon that I'm going to run in February. Is there anyone pointing a gun at my head? No. In the words of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, I choose to do these things not because they're easy, but because they're hard. And because by doing them, I'm going to prove myself what I'm able to do. That's the shift our generation needs to make. From discipline as a form of domination to discipline as a form of self-respect. In the old world, they said, do this or you'll be punished. In the new world, we have to say, do this because you will grow. And when you start to live like that, when effort becomes your own choice, you stop needing motivation. You stop finding excuses. You stop trying to find the perfect conditions. You're just readying yourself. That's the real freedom. Not doing whatever you want, but doing whatever you feel is right, even when it's hard. The new discipline is not about control, it's about becoming. It's not the army shouting to us, yes sir. It's the quiet moment when you yell at yourself, I will. As a conclusion to this video, this is not a video about hating comfort. It's about earning it. Comfort should be a form of rest, not our purpose in life. It's the pause after the climb, not the climb itself. And we have built a world where nobody feels compelled to climb anymore. So here's a harsh truth. Do you want to feel alive again? Then you'll have to earn it. Do something hard, on purpose. Take a cold shower. Run in the rain tomorrow. Choose your challenge and commit to it. Face the thing that you keep avoiding and stay there, even when it becomes hard and painful. Because growth will never come from comfort. It comes from resistance. It comes from friction. From standing in the place where everything inside you says stop, and even then telling yourself no. That's where confidence is born. That's where self-esteem lives. That's where meaning starts. That's where life comes back. So prove it to yourself, to the people you love, to the world who told you everything should be easy. Start small. One action, one habit, one moment of choosing the hard thing over the easy one. Do that every day, and soon you will not need comfort anymore because you'll have something much better. You'll have discipline. So take the step today. Do something hard. And when it hurts, that's how you'll know that you're alive. Thank you for watching this episode of Decode. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, I think we all need to rethink our values around discipline and around comfort, because I think the pendulum has swung so much on the comfort side that we have lost the ability to be disciplined, to grow, and to develop resilience. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like so that I understand what are the topics that you guys are more interested in. And of course, if you subscribe to the channel, that's the most helpful thing you can do, because it will help us grow and get more visibility from YouTube. So please hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so that you get notified when I post my next video. I typically try to post videos every Tuesday and every Friday. And so if you subscribe, you'll get notified when my next video hits YouTube. And of course, thanks for watching Decode. I hope you found this video useful, and see you on the next episode of Decode.